The matter between Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi and former Chairperson of Productivity SA and CEO of Thuja Capital, Mthunzi Mdwaba, has been moved to the 2nd of February at the High Court sitting in Pretoria. Nxesi filed an urgent court application in November for the courts to set aside the R5 billion Thuja Capital Unemployment Insurance Fund job creation contract. This is over a deal between the UIF and the company that has been marred by a R500 million bribery allegation brought by the businessman. SABC News Economics reporter Katlego Legodi was at the High Court and he joins us in Studio 4 an update. Good afternoon, Katlego. So take us through the reasons behind the hold-up at the courts today.
A very good afternoon to you, Anastasia, and of course to our viewers at home. Really, we were anticipating and expecting that today we'll get a sense of clarity in terms of where the matter is. This, of course, stemming from last year. So last year, towards the end of last year, around November, we saw the Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi calling an urgent press briefing. And this is where he was outlining his line of march or his next steps in terms of these allegations leveled against him by Mr. Mthunzi Mdwaba. So we saw him saying that he's approached the court on an urgent basis, one, to set aside this particular contract that is at the center of this back and forth and what is happening there, but two, to also try by all means to, more or less ask for the court to stop Mr. Mdwaba from making these allegations that he maintains that they are unfounded. So this matter then set last year for the first time, and it was moved to today, and this is where we're expecting for it to really get underway in terms of a trial, and the affidavits would have been filed, and for us to really get to the crux of why we find ourselves entertaining, or the courts really entertaining this matter that was brought forward by the minister. So today we get to the court and we find the minister's people. The minister was not there physically, but his team from the Department of Labour was there representing him in terms of what is happening there. The lawyers were there as well. On the side also was Mr. Mdwaba. He was there in person, whereby he was, I guess, he was appearing, more or less wanting to get to the bottom and more or less hear what the court will have to say about this particular matter. So the matter could not sit today because we are told that there are outstanding answering affidavits that needs to be submitted and other documents pertaining to this case that needs to be finished to the court by Mr. Mdwaba's legal team. So Mr. Mdwaba then in this instance would come back to us to say, but the delay is not on my side, it's on the ministry's end, because they've made all of these accusations and we've asked them to furnish us with documentations that would help us to respond to what they are saying and what they are alleging. Also at the center of what is happening here is a forensic report that more or less was roped in to get to the bottom of this particular contract. We're talking about a R5 billion contract that was gotten into by the UIF and Thuja Capital, this being the company of Mr. Mdwaba. This to ensure that there's a little bit of movement in terms of job creation on the ground. So he approached the department. He says everything was above board. He more or less went through the various processes, FMA and the likes, to ensure that legally this particular contract would stand. But we're seeing the minister disputing that contract to say that there were no processes that were followed here, and hence we don't have the Director General that was at the helm at that Labour Department still there today. He has moved on, but he is the one that signed off on this particular contract. So it's a delay and it's a blame game, really, when you look at it between the minister and Mr. Mdwaba. Mr. Mdwaba believes that it's personal because he's saying that the minister has it for him in terms of really wanting to get to the bottom of what happened here. But he maintains that this contract is a well-needed contract. This intervention is a well-needed intervention, looking at the fact that South Africa has a high unemployment rate and the young people are the ones in the receiving end. But I want us to listen to him, Anastasia, in terms of what he responded to when I asked him a question around why do we find ourselves here and why is the minister then saying that the delays are coming from your end. He's saying that they're playing really a dangerous game in terms of how then they would abuse the funds, the state funds, because the minister would use those state funds to go to the courts. But on his end, it's unfortunate because he'll have to pay his lawyers from his pocket, something that he's taken issue with. Let's listen in to what he said earlier on.
It's very easy for a minister who's busy abusing state resources and abusing court processes to point fingers at people. So let me tell you, you'll recall that last year we were here. When we were here last year, he asked for what is called case management, which is sort of an expedited process of running through the case, which was granted. I was interviewed by yourselves. I gave the draft order. It said we're coming back to court today. But in between, there's a lot of things that were to happen. They were waiting for some of the respondents to respond. In fact, the UIF, as the 8th respondent, responded about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, with something that was about 400, 500 pages, which today, yes, last night, they're withdrawing paragraph 10 of the original affidavit, another 400 pages or so, just to withdraw. And that paragraph 10, just so you know, was them saying that they want to review the decision by the UIF to recommend the contract. Now they are withdrawing that. So the question you must ask yourself is, why then would you withdraw a UIF recommendation to approve my contract by the DG Lamati who has left, unless something is smelling funny? That's point number one. Point number two, some of those intermittent things that should have happened is that we were to be given certain information. So we've asked for, you'll remember the much discussed forensic investigation report, which was given to Sabelo Skiti of the Sunday World. He's the only person in South Africa who was given this somehow by the minister, all right, and his people. And no one else has this. Parliament hasn't seen it, the UIF board hasn't seen it, and is refusing to give it to us. And yet everything he talks about in the application is based on this forensic report.
We're going to talk shortly about where to from here, but perhaps you can backtrack for us a little bit, because you've been tracking this for us.
No.
I know that Mr. Mdwaba had also made bribery allegations about certain ministers in relation to this contract. Were the bribery allegations made before or after Minister Thulas Nxesi called that press briefing to set aside the contract? Do you know?
They were made before. So that press briefing was to also respond to what Mr. Mdwaba had said. You're right to say he's implicated 3 ministers here whom he says that they were soliciting 10% from this 5 billion rand contract that he was to get as Thuja. But then he said that, more or less he said no. And when he said no to the bribery that they were trying to get from him, that's when he was fired from his job. Also, he's spoken about the forensic report, saying this forensic report has been spoken about at length by the minister, and some of his actions, even in firing Mr. Mdwaba, would be based on this particular forensic report. He wants this forensic report scrutinized. It was a report by Gawula Forensic Investigation. They were roped in to try to get to the bottom of what happened here. So he seems to believe that also the minister's decisions and his assertions and everything else that he's been saying here is based on this report. But he's saying that this report, no one has seen this report. So remember that also the ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, went to the Sandton police station to open a case against Mr. Mdwaba. We don't know yet in terms of where those separate court cases are. But as we stand, the minister also just refuting all of these allegations of bribery against him. 500 million rand. That's what he was accused of trying to get from Mr. Mdwaba and Thuja Capital.
Katlego, thank you so much for joining us and unpacking those developments for us. That is Katlego Legodi talking to us about what happened at the High Court sitting in Pretoria a little bit earlier on.